this golden hobo reminded me of another thing. These old men don't die broken heart. Either shack up with another woman immediately or die of laziness. Seriously. They die of laziness. So here's your reminder that, Grandpa didn't die right after Grandma because he just couldn't take a life without her because it's hot. No. First of all, Grandpa, I'm sorry if you did not know this, but most of our grandpas were holding our grandmas hostage. Sometimes there was love. But as my mutual Candace Kelly is writing a book on this right now, a lot of that generation and older, these women were like, they're hostages, and a lot of them were even child brides. And so a lot of our grandmas were actually getting great and didn't even like Grandpa, which explains a lot when you start to realize, I don't know about you, but my grandmas were like big old burkers. And I was like, what is their problem? Why are they so mean to Grandpa? Well, one of them was literally held hostage. He beat her. He terrorized her. She asked for a divorce for 20 years, and he wouldn't give it to her, so she forked the neighbor. Good for you, Granny. Good for you. And then she died before him, which is one reason why I talk about this so much. These men will literally unalive you through your nervous system, even if they don't outright unalive you. So their moods and all these things. Don't take that lightly, because there's a lot of women who die before their husbands and leave these widows like Gary. Not saying Gary did that, although I'm always gonna be side-eyeing him. But anytime I see a man who outlives his wife, I'm always like, what did you do to her? Maybe nothing. Maybe he loved her and they were so happy. But a lot of times either he just wore her out so much that she couldn't take care of her own health, or his being a little king of the castle and the little temper tantrums and, his moods and weaponizing those to keep her on edge all the time. Because what if he's mad? As soon as he opens the door to the whole house changes. Because he can't regulate his emotions, which is not true. He regulates them all the time at work and out in public. So he chooses not to. So that is why I talk about this so much, is because both my grandmas died way before my grandpas. I don't know why my other grandma died. I don't think my grandpa had something to do with that. But I do know that autoimmune diseases, cancer, cortisol levels, and all kinds of things that me and my mutuals talk about all the time, those actually wear on our health. And when a woman is overworked, doing all of the domestic labor, getting zero help from her partner, which is literally just her boss that doesn't pay her, because that's how all our grandpas were legally, since women really couldn't have money, or credit at least, couldn't abort the babies when they needed to without maybe dying like Revolutionary Road. If you haven't seen my breakdown of that, please go see it. So they're usually in poor health because they're taking care of everyone but themselves. So when these men outlive their wives, I'm suspicious of them immediately. And by the way, I've said this before, despite refusing to give my grandma a divorce and her cheating on him for 20 years. Like, again, you do you. Do what you gotta do to get your revenge on this man who will not let you free. When she died, he literally celebrated at her funeral. Free at last, which is, coming from a Southern white man, so disrespectful. Which, given that this was a Southern white man who grew up and raised kids during the Jim Crow South, you can guess how he felt and thought about human rights, social justice, all of the things that my people, especially in that area, really didn't care about back then. He also did a little dance. I remember, little the big old ears. He was such a happy man. So full of joy. I just love my granddaddy. Didn't know he was a terrorist. And he said, well, I'm king of the mountain now. Imagine the king baby literally saying, I'm king of the mountain now because she's dead. So then he had the time of his life with another woman, just like you. Thank you for this comment. Because right after my grandmother kicked the bucket, he was out there dating everybody. Literally calling my dad, talking about his schmeg's life in the most inappropriate way ever. Which really explains a lot of boundary issues in that side of my family, by the way. Including my dad's boundaries, or lack thereof. He's flying all over the world with Nora, Some woman who is just full of energy, and then she refused to marry him because she's not going to bury another husband. When you say bury, what women mean by that, when they say bury another husband, it doesn't mean grieve another husband. It means caretaking. Caretaking. It's got nothing to do with grief or love. It's taking care of another sick man. Because when men are sick, they're already hard to deal with because they have so much self-pity and entitlement. A lot of times they're weaponizing their moods when they're feeling good. Imagine a sick man and how exhausting a sick man is. And how full of self-pity and moodiness and demanding and give me this, give me that, and not appreciating that. That's what women mean when they say that widows are not going to marry again and bury another husband. That's what they mean. It's got nothing to do with love or grief. So when she refused to marry him, he kept out dating until he met Billy. Billy married him, took care of him when he had cancer, and stole all of his money. So that the kids and the grandkids had nothing. And again, I've said that was so dirty, Billy. If you ever see this, a part of me is like really proud of you. He compensated for that work of taking care of a grumpy old man with cancer. But also, like, he terrorizes children. Maybe you should have left something for them. I don't know. Whatever. Actually, Billy's probably dead. Billy reincarnate if you're watching anyway. But I want to get into some statistics on this, because men who don't immediately marry someone else, even though they claimed the love of my life is gone, and then are literally dating someone right after. And the last time I made a video about this, comments were full of women being like, yeah, my dad or my grandpa brought his new girlfriend or new wife to the funeral. Like, these men have no shame. Immediately dating. Is why a show like the Golden Bachelor is so offensive. The idea that women should marry a man at that age who is literally going to make her life all the harder, even though she's probably taken care of children, or she didn't have her own children, was an aunt to many children, and maybe took care of her parents, maybe took care of her in-laws or whatever. Women have literally been taking care of people for most of their life. Hell, we're even taking care of our parents when we're children. How many daughters were parentified? Now, I'm not saying that all kids can't be parentified, but daughters tend to be more so, and especially the oldest daughter. I literally, even as a child, remember thinking, isn't this bizarre that like I seem to understand things more than my dad? And by understand, I mean, why do I feel like I'm the mature one in the room? But so many people can relate to that, especially if you had like a narcissist or an addict, king baby, blah, 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 in your home. A lot of kids were like, wow, yeah, like literally dad is the baby. Don't wake the baby. And by the way, there is that game literally called Don't Wake Daddy. And the whole house revolves around not waking daddy, because with that comes consequences, right? So whether we're children, teenagers, 20s, 30s, or 70s, we're going to be taking care of people. And then when we're not taking care of people, we feel bad. And people call us selfish. And if we don't want to have children, selfish. Okay, well, even if I don't have children, I promise you, I will be forced to take care of somebody because I'm a woman, unless I fight hard against it. So don't you worry now. All the child-free women out there are going to be forced to pick up the slack, forced to work all those shifts that the parents are taking off, because people with families get priorities. You know what I mean? Like, women are always going to be taking care of everybody. But my goal here is that we stop taking care of men, because they wouldn't do the same for us. Take care of men who would do the same for you. Everyone else, all the other ones, let them die alone. They don't deserve it. And they're literally going to unalive you, because even if you do take care of them, they are so stressful. Because instead of being grateful, they feel entitled. Instead of dealing with their feelings around dying, they make you pay for it. They take their rage out from God towards God on you. Why do I have to die? And they torture the people taking care of them. And then they're also terrible patients. They won't even take the meds. They won't go, they literally make you like, come on, take your meds now. You gotta eat. You gotta eat. It's ridiculous. My dad, when he broke his ankle in like 60 something or 70, 60 I think, would not do 5 minutes of like, exercise. He literally was like, I'll just get in a wheelchair. I'll just be in a wheelchair. I'm like, who's gonna push that wheelchair around? He just assumed his wife would be cool with that. Taking care of a man in a wheelchair, all the work that might involve, simply because he's lazy. Dying from laziness. Caretaking is a big job. People who caretake need to be compensated because a lot of times, and I've done videos on this, a lot of times the person taking care of somebody, especially if it's a woman taking care of a man, because they are such difficult patients and because a lot of times they, weigh twice as much as them, it's really hard work for a woman to pick up a man who is like, she literally can't. Every time my dad fell, we had to call the fire department because we couldn't pick him up. The fire department was over there all the time. And that's when we're like, okay, this is not we gotta get professional help. And we started looking for a memory care center. But when he had that broken ankle, I could not believe it. I was like, what? How could you not do this very simple thing that the doctor said would help you heal so that you could walk again? And all you gotta do is literally, they came to the house to do physical therapy, I don't know, a few times a week or something. I don't remember the details. And him saying, no, I'm not gonna do it. I'm like, but somebody is literally going to have to take care of you when you can't walk. And that's a big job. And literally all you have to do is a tiny bit of to do this thing to heal. He didn't want to. Thank God he did a little bit so he could walk. But all of that labor that he was just putting on his wife out of nothing but just laziness and apathy and self-hatred on his part blew my mind. And that's when I was like, wow, what? I can't imagine just refusing to heal myself and then not feeling bad that makes someone do a lot of work simply because I'm refusing to do something to help myself. You know what I mean? I don't want to sound ableist on here at all. I don't want to make it sound like someone is a burden for this. What I have a problem with is men expecting women to caretake, not expecting to compensate them in any way whatsoever in terms of just appreciation, if nothing else, and refusing to do the bare minimum to make it so that person doesn't have extra work, because being able to walk and not walk is a huge difference in terms of what that person caring for them is going to have to do. And that's why when I started hearing about broken heart syndrome and knowing how my dad acted with a wife that was alive, I cannot imagine what a nightmare he would have been if she had gone first. And this brings me to my other point. Losing a spouse makes men 70% more likely to die within a year. Now, this came out just a year ago, but a big part of this is that this study was done with researchers in Denmark, the UK, and Singapore, because that percentage is higher for men in the United States. Shocker. Now, there's a lot of things that cause this widowhood effect, which is basically when someone the spouse dies shortly after their partner died. A lot of things play into this, and if I had more time to research this, I would go into the whole thing, but I could do a whole series on this. Let me know if you want me to talk more about this, because I got plenty to say. Religion, race, the cause of death. I would argue without even, I don't know why they left this out. Maybe it's later, I forget. Money, hello, money, your socioeconomic status, and the country you live in, because this was the UK, where they have the NHS, Singapore, which I'm not sure off the top of my head because I can't remember. I'm pretty sure they have a universal health care because the United States is one of the only countries that does not. And Denmark, which we know they got all kinds of social security there, way better than the UK. So their results are actually going to be even kinder to men, because at least men have social services a little bit or whatever than the men in the United States, especially if you're not rich, even though there is Medicare, but still. They also found that younger people, this was from couples 65 and older, 1 million citizens in Denmark alone. Okay, this is Denmark alone, 1 million, age 65 and older, found that the younger people in that age group were susceptible to dying even sooner, which that surprised them. There's a whole thing. I'm going to kind of breeze through this. And that men, the same age as men who had not lost a spouse, 70% more likely to die because their spouse died. Women were only 27%. Interesting. I wonder why the women aren't dying as much after their spouse died. Maybe because some of them are like, yes, I can go live my best life. As I have talked about so much before, this article I wrote, one of the big points I made in this article is that men are lonely as hell and they got no friends, and it gets worse with time, especially once they're retired. And that a lot of women are literally waiting for their husbands to die because they're like, God, this man, he's got no friends. I got to be a little clown for him and entertain him because he doesn't do anything but watch TV. Maybe he goes and plays golf or some crap if he's got friends. But most of them aren't doing anything. And then as soon as that dead weight is lifted, because he doesn't even treat her well at this point usually. And at that age, it's hard for women to leave these men, even though the great divorce is going. But they just feel like, oh, at this point I can't. What will he do? What will he do? Not your problem. He doesn't care about you. Why do you care so much about him? This is literally, we need to start matching energy. But the women I interviewed in this, some of them said, oh yeah, all my mom's friends, as soon as their husbands die, go on a cruise with all their best friends. It's like a celebration because these men are just dead weight, especially if they took care of these men while they're sick. They're relieved. So of course they're not dying. They're actually finally not dead inside. This is like a rebirth for them because these men kept them hostage, especially grandmas and generation and whatever. It's getting better now. Better. A lot of women are like, I'm done. And at 45 or 50, they're like, bye. Gender and age are the biggest factors for whether they're going to have that widowhood, whatever syndrome. I forgot what it's already called because I think it's crap. We should redefine it. It's not a broken heart. It's men refuse to do any of the labor that women do for them. So they just tap out. I don't want to do it. I'm just going to die. Seriously, that's how much they hate themselves and refuse to change. There's like so much this study, and you know what I hate about studies like this is they collect all this data, but then they don't really think about patriarchy when they're interpreting it. They're like, there's the male lonely crisis. Oh, they're dying of loneliness. Yeah, well, that woman was dying from loneliness in a marriage where a man didn't treat her like a human and didn't even see her as a person, but rather a means to an end, a tool, a schmeg's doll, and basically free labor. Don't you think that's lonely? They're not talking about that. They don't care. Lonely men, lonely men. And as it says here, men tend to rely heavily on their spouses. Can we reframe that? Instead of rely, can we say exploit? Force them to do things? Because rely means they're just kind of, rely takes away them being guilty. Because a lot of these women don't want to be relied on. They are given no choice because the men weaponize incompetence, because of all the mind tricks that these men play, and literally downright refuse to take care of things themselves. Well, what is she going to do? And remember, I made a whole video about how unreliable men are, and that's why women don't feel safe in relationships and women can't trust men, is because even when men are given a to-do list, they don't do the things on the to-do list, or they will avoid it as long as possible until she literally does it because she's so afraid they're going to lose their house or some crap is going to happen because he's unreliable. These leaders, these men were supposed to submit to. For what? They literally are the most unreliable people ever, and so they rely on their wives. Exploit. It's exploit. It's not rely. Forcing someone to be the reliable person is a form of abuse, really. That's not what she signed up for, but that's what she's getting. And they're like, but they grew up during times where men blah, 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 blah. Okay, whatever. I'm actually not really buying that so much because that same excuse is never applied for anything with us to avoid accountability for things. This backs it up too. Usually right after the death, the risk for the other spouse's death is low because all these people, and by people I mean women, are coming in and making lasagna and casserole and making sure that poor widow is fed. So many women, especially like pick-me women, would do all that for men, take care of men, literally do everything for men, and they would never do that for women. That's why you don't want to hang out with women who are not decentering men, because they definitely won't show up when you are sick. They got too many men to take care of. who would never do the same for them. And then those very women expect us to go take care of them when those men leave them when they get sick, because that's what men do. So after women spend so much time taking care of these new widows, that right after that initial period is when men start dying. Not of a broken heart, but because they look around their house and they think, who the hell's gonna clean all this? Not me. And then you're like, maybe they'll hire a maid or somebody. And then they're like, well, who's gonna cook me stuff? Who's gonna let me fuck? They start thinking of all the things that they have to do for themselves or pay someone to do. And they're like, no, thank you. Bye-bye. It's been a fun time. And they just die. They just die of laziness. Now, I don't ever really think laziness is really what anything is about. I know I use that word a lot. I call men lazy and not a lot. Usually something behind laziness is something else. It is fear. It is imposter syndrome or whatever. Because I think of this as an artist, a lot of times I put off things and then call myself lazy when really I'm just afraid. So what could be behind this laziness? Well, entitlement, stubbornness, basically refusing to change, and feeling like somebody should do all this for them because they always have mommy and then wifey and then maybe a grown adult daughter and maybe wife's family, blah, blah, blah. But now that you don't have that and feeling like you still shouldn't have to do that, especially at this old age, after working so hard, as if women have not been working so hard. We just don't get paid for all the things we do, which is endless work. Even just figuring out your stupid mood is work. We should get paid for that. We don't. Instead, we have to figure out your mood so you don't us. Or take away our resources or whatever it is that men tend to do to punish women. And so their refusal to do the work that they have just been given for free or coerced women into doing their whole life, they don't want to do it, so they'd rather die. But Melanie, wouldn't they want to live? Don't they have the will to live? Maybe if they didn't hate themselves so much. Because I'm sorry, I don't care how much money you have, how much you are doted over, how much is just given to you. If you know in your guts that you got all that by hurting people, or that maybe, just maybe, you didn't really deserve all that, like that your wife was actually smarter, funnier, all these other things, definitely braver than you, and could endure far more pain than you, and yet you have all the power. That is really hard to figure out. And all of your worth is on external things too. So patriarchy teaches men to hate themselves. So it doesn't surprise me if after their wife dies, they have all this work. It's stressful, right? And that means they can change or stay the same. Well, it takes a lot of will to change. You have to have a will to change. But if you really hate yourself and you're kind of like, I'm done, I got everything I want, I don't have any friends anyway, and that's going to take effort. Like, it's so much work. Okay, I'm out. Bye. If men actually loved themselves more instead of hating themselves because they will not question patriarchy and will not exploit so many women, they may actually want to live. And then let's say they aren't that route. They'll either do that or they'll just marry another bitch and make her do it. Some of these men don't even want to bother trying to find another woman. So I think the ones who just die of a broken heart, unless they truly, truly were in love with their partner, and that has happened. There's plenty of people who had true love throughout time, regardless of patriarchy. But I would be willing to admit, there's probably far higher percentage of our grandmas and great grandmas and blah, 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 who are just straight up hostages and learn to love their captor, like Belle, and a literal beast who threw a table at her. Well, he's not so bad. With a little love for me, he can be not such a beast. So men are not dying of a broken heart. They're dying of tapping out, I don't want to change, I don't want to do all this stuff myself. Or they immediately find another woman to put all that on and then keep going. Kick the exploitation can down the road so that they never have to do anything for themselves. Tough choices, I know. It also should be noted that these findings do not include non-heterosexual relationship or even close relationships between unmarried people. I want to see a study on that. I would love to see a study between cishet couples and how this plays out and all the other kind of couples, including like platonic best friends. Because I guarantee you, I would take care of my best friend Liz, and I know she would take care of me regardless of our relationship statuses in a heartbeat if either of us got really, really sick. And we're not married. We've been best friends and soulmates for 20 years. I want to see a study comparing those kinds of relationships versus cishet marriages, because that would really show you how much patriarchy is involved in all of this. And even though they have articles like this, yes, you can actually die of a broken heart. They also cited things like Debbie Reynolds, how Carrie Fisher died shortly after. You can die of a broken heart, but I promise you these broken hearts are oftentimes not in cishet couple. And then the broken hearts of these men is not a broken heart. He may think he loved her, but do you really love someone that you're exploiting? Knowingly exploiting? Probably not. And look at this, in the US, men were 90% more likely to die in the first 3 months after bereavement, and the range was only 50% for women. I find that kind of shocking. But I think that one is more about the caregiving, because I have personally had to do an intervention on a family member who we were afraid she was going to die taking care of this man who was so sick. Literally had to do an intervention like an addict, right? Like, hey, I'm afraid for you. This is not good for him, and we're afraid you're actually going to die first. So I don't even believe this broken heart is behind this. I swear, they'll come up with statistics and then not actually explain the why. And in the United States, where the healthcare is so expensive and inaccessible for so many people, that's also what this is about. Whenever I see crap like this was from Wikipedia, married men show higher reports of happiness in their marriage, and maybe that's why they're dying. I'd be happy too if I had someone who was doing everything for me. Even these happy men are still cheating. When they say men are happier in marriages, I really wish they'd just go a little bit beyond that and say happy because they benefit from marriage. If they just complete the sentence, the statistics and statements like this would make so much more sense. But instead, a lot of women and people are reading that as, well, men really love their wives. They're happier when they're married, and they die after she dies. Now, do you understand? It's not because those men love those women. It's because marriage benefits men more than women. And if a man is not making your life easier, he's making it harder and slowly unaliving you. And so your chances of actually glowing up if he dies are pretty good. His chances of just dying if his sole source of labor goes before him is high. So I'm sorry, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but maybe this will help women stop believing this lie that marriage is going to solve your problem. Marriage is the goal. Without marriage, I can't be happy. All of that's a lie. You can be very happy in a marriage, but not if you end up with a man who will not deal with all of his stuff, question his entitlement, actively fight against that desire to exploit you that's in any man who is raised under patriarchy as a man. And he also has to love the crap out of you, because if you don't have all those things, you will lose. And the person who really has a broken heart from all this is women. But studies like this make us look heartless. Imagine that. Men projecting. Everything with men is opposite day. I swear, I'm actually going to write some songs at some point and learn how to play these instruments. Please like, comment, share, and hit the notification. Thank you for listening to this, and let me know your thoughts and stories in the comments. Thank you for helping me grow my page. And look out for that Patreon. It is coming any day.